Thank you, Andrei, and thanks for the invitation. So for those who don't know me, I'm Hélène from BPIE, the Buildings Performance Institute Europe. And I am presenting here as BPIE's senior policy advisor, so not really as part of BPIE as project partner of many of those projects. Next slide. I assume most of you know who we are at BPIE, so I won't present that. In the next slide, next again, thank you. I again highlighted for those who are maybe not so familiar with the EU policy process where we are now with the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, but Pau already presented that. What I wanted to highlight is indeed that we have, as of now, 2 years for the transposition, which is really important at national level, and a few dates coming in between now and 2026 with the Commission guidance, but also the delegated acts. So a lot of work still to do, which is moving from Brussels to the national level. In the next slide, I am doing a bit of a promotion of our latest publication that is looking at summarizing and analyzing the main parts of the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive. So if you don't want to read a very long EU level legislation, but just want to read 30 pages of summary, please have a look. It's covering in the next slides how we are presenting the EPBD to a broader public. Of course, Pau had also some building blocks. I think we can analyze and present the EPBD in different ways. This is the way we are seeing it in BPIE. We are looking at 4 main building blocks: the standard for new buildings with the ZEB standard, renovation policies for existing buildings with MEPs for non-residential and the trajectory for residential. Also some improvements in the planning tool, national building renovation plans, the 2050 vision, and a lot of new measures to decarbonize heating and cooling. And then a big improvement as well in the enabling framework, everything that has to do with advisory services, information, and financial support. And at the core and at the center also, always in all provisions, social fairness considerations. Today, next slide, of course, we are focusing on the enabling framework with the information and advisory services. Next slide. In that specific part, we have, of course, EPCs, renovation passports, and this is where you are the experts. We also have specific new provisions in the directive on one-stop shops and also big changes concerning the financial support. In the next slide, of course, today I will only focus on EPCs and renovation passports. And the way I will do that is maybe be a bit less descriptive than the Commission and take a step back and go back to the renovation wave, which was the strategy document almost 4 years ago, setting out the intentions, the objectives of what we wanted to achieve with the building sector legislation. Here you can see objectives and intention, which are from the renovation wave, and some of them are actually not explicitly there, but are needs or wishes that were always shared in the construction and renovation sector. So we were always saying that we need more converging EPCs, sometimes more harmonized EPCs, more information into the EPCs as well. We need to boost the usefulness of EPCs, not only to share information about a current status, but also to guide building owners towards deep renovation of their buildings. We need to have more EPCs as well. We know the coverage of the building stock in the EU is not very wide in some member states. We need also to share more information, not only with the building owners, but also with the larger set of actors. We need to be able to use EPCs also to attract funding and to better disperse funding, whether it is from the public pocket or private financing. And also we have now a wide array of tools, renovation passport, the smart readiness indicator, energy audits, etc. And we need to ensure that there is a good coordination and complementarity between these indicators. So a lot of intentions, a lot of needs that were set at the start of the negotiations. Now we will go through what actually in details the EPBD brings and sort of do a gap assessment or benchmark against those. So next slide. On EPCs, it was tackled a bit by Pau, but indeed we have an increasingly common approach. I would also not say that we harmonize the EPCs, but we have a more convergence and we keep some national flexibility. So we only now use those letters from A to G. We ask member states to ensure that the distribution between B and F is quite balanced. They should also use the EPCA for describing a ZEB building, and the G are the very worst performing buildings at national level. They are also asked to have a common visual identity on the EPC at national level. This is especially important for member states that have a federal organization. And this scale shall be used as of the transposition date, so in 2 years, May 2026, with an exemption for some member states which have just rescaled in the last few years. In the next slide, I added a lot of information on the content of the EPCs and also the issuing and the coverage. So a lot of improvements have been brought by the directive on what is actually included technically in the EPC. A lot more indicators. Pau mentioned as well, the scope is widening. We are starting to disclose information on whole life carbon, global warming potentials. We also have this common EPC template, and I think we should not underestimate this improvement that the negotiation has brought, that member states have agreed to use a common template for EPCs. And also the scope, not only what is in the EPCs as information, but also the recommendation part has a widened scope. And this is something that we have been calling for a long time. Now we have recommendation that should also look at indoor environmental quality, that looks at financial incentives, that look at also the heating and cooling decarbonization part of the building. And Pau mentioned as well the strengthened quality control and reliability of EPCs. We know how EPCs can be criticized for the lack of reliability. So I think this control aspect is also very important and has been strengthened in the directive. Hello. Sure. In terms of those improvements, I find all of them are very positive, and it's a lot of good changes. Maybe a small, more negative point is that those improvements will probably only be limited to a small number of EPCs. The reason why this is because, yes, we increased the trigger points to issue EPCs to not only when you're constructing a building, when you're selling it, or when you're renting to a new tenant. We added major renovation and renewal of a contract with the current tenant. However, we know this is not going to increase very drastically the number of EPCs on the market, at least in some member states where probably you have, for example, a lot of the share of owner-occupied home is bigger. So this is also, maybe the sad news in that is that you have like better EPCs, but it will not necessarily materialize on a majority of EPCs, or it will be done, but very gradually over the next 5 to 10 years. The reason why is also because the EPC lifespan has remained 10 years. It was proposed to be downsized to 5, but it still is 10 years. So in between now and 2026, we will probably have new EPCs issued, but those EPCs issued in, let's say, December 2025 will still have 10 years to live. So they will still be on the market in 2035. At the same time, as of 2026, you will have these new EPCs coming. So you will also have a coexistence of the two EPCs. And this might create some complexity, and I think we have to communicate about it as well. In the next slides, I come back to my objectives. And next, this is a very subjective, I would say, assessment. What I would say is, I think we have achieved with the directive the improvement of the EPC in terms of the content. A lot of more details, more information that is useful for consumers has been added with the template. In terms of the harmonization, comparability, I think we're getting closer. We're not into full harmonization, but a lot more convergence. In terms of the coverage, as I said, it's maybe the point where we might have missed increasing the number of EPCs on the market. Yeah, we know that we can do more. In the next slides, I now talk about the renovation passports. I think it is one of also the main improvements of the directive is we had in 2018 the first mention of the renovation passport as a concept. And now we have a fully fledged annex explaining what is a renovation passport. We have an official definition shared at EU level on what a renovation passport is. From the BPIE's view, I think the framework is really good. So the definition is good. It is outlining that a renovation passport should help going towards deep renovation. It also frames stage deep renovation as a renovation that follows the steps of a renovation passport. So that is really good. A stage deep renovation cannot be a renovation done in 10 steps and you do not really achieve a good energy performance. So that is really good. We have a common EU framework for renovation passport that is really framing how member states will introduce the renovation passport at national level. That is already in 2 years. So a lot of work in some member states which have not yet started the work on renovation passports. Maybe a more negative point, I think we could have done better in linking the renovation passport to other requirements of the directive, notably Article 9, which is the renovation of existing buildings. In that part, the enabling framework of minimum energy performance standards and the trajectory mentions specifically one-stop shops as a way to help delivering on those measures, but it doesn't mention the renovation passport. And I think that's a missed opportunity because, of course, the renovation passport can help as well here. As I said, we have a positive view on how the renovation passport is introduced in the directive. I think it achieves a good balance. There are some quality principles ensured. You have to deliver it from an on-site visit by someone that is certified. At the same time, it's forward-looking. It mentions the digital approach. So I think it's really balanced, and it also thinks about the costs and really asked member states to look at the affordability of those tools and to give special support to vulnerable households. So in the next slide and the next one, I would have a positive assessment and say that it really also took into account the coordination between the renovation passport and the EPCs, because it says the renovation passport can also be issued jointly with an EPC. There are cross-references, so it was really thought through when introduced. So I think we are on the safe side with that. Now on how EPCs and the renovation passport can be really tooled to boost deep renovation, I would say the renovation passport indeed makes a link with deep renovation. Unfortunately, we know it's not mandatory for building owners. It's only mandatory for member states to introduce the scheme. So it's also a bit of a missed opportunity. And I don't think that the EPC really had a really strong push to say that EPC recommendation should only recommend deep renovation. So I think here again, a bit of a missed opportunity. We improve the recommendations, but we don't really make a clear link that they should advise for deep renovation. In the next slide, I think there was one before and one again. There was something and one again. Quickly, something on the forward-looking approach and access to data. The directive now also gives a definition to the digital building logbook and mentions the DBL here and there in the directive. So maybe not the most advanced in improvement compared to EPCs and renovation passport, but it's there. And also introduces the national energy performance databases, which bring together all these tools, try to also improve how data is managed, stored, shared with a lot of different actors, and how the information sharing between the national level and the EU level is also improved. with processes, templates, checks, etc. So also very good improvements on this side. And the next slide, and the next is, again, also a somehow positive assessment from our side on how the accessibility of information has been improved, and maybe a bit of a missed opportunity in linking with financing. So all these tools have mentions that they should be affordable, that vulnerable households should get special support to get them. So that's very good. And they also mentioned that EPCs and renovation passports should inform homeowners about the funding that is available for renovation. So there are some links, but unfortunately, I think one of maybe the more negative side is that you don't really have a very clear link of proportion between the depth of the renovation and the amount of funding that you get. So, or the fact that if you get public funding, you should only use a renovation passport. This has been proposed, but was deleted in the negotiation. So we could have had a stronger link, but a few placeholders are already there. So my final words are now more on to the next steps and where we are in the process. As Pau was saying, the transposition period will start very soon for 2 years. This is now really the road which will bring the directive from Brussels to all the capitals and on the ground. We know that we have a huge decarbonization gap to close, and I think the EPBD is really a good driver to close this gap. But, and there's always a but, it is only as good as it is transposed and implemented on the ground. We have a very good directive now, which has a good balance between all the improvements, the national flexibility, but it's now up to national and local authorities to implement it together with national stakeholders. And the next slide is really about what we can do as a stakeholder community working on those topics. As I said, and Pau also agreed, we have a wealth of insights from the projects working on specifically those issues, new things that now have to be transposed. There is this need at national level. I think some member states are more advanced than others, as usually, but some will really be in need of knowledge, of best practices, of help. And maybe my final point would be on the increased political relevance. I think it is now really also politically important to get EPCs, to get renovation passports right, not only to give the right information to consumers, which in itself is a very important objective, but as Pau was saying, now EPCs, renovation passports are really the key tools to deliver on all the other renovation and construction measures, the new building standard, the MEPs, the residential trajectory, the heating and cooling decarbonization measures, the planning, and therefore it's really getting the EPC and the renovation passport right that will help also in terms of the communication to citizens about renovation policies. And I think this is my last slide. Just to mention that, yeah, BPIE is involved in many of the projects, so we're looking forward to continue the work on helping member states to transpose and helping all these good work from all these past years and in the coming years to get to the ground and get taken up in real policies at national level. Thank you.